Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We are really looking forward to this conversation about government, national security, and foreign policy positions. We have a terrific lineup of alumni here with us. My name is Eric Owens. I'm the director of the International Studies program, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. I want to just also thank you for the students who are with us today and students who will be watching in the coming months and years ahead. We know how challenging and difficult this employment situation is with COVID-19 that adds on to the already anxious transition from college out into the working world or into the service or graduate school world. And I want to thank all of our alumni who have really rushed out in support of you by offering to make themselves available for these conversations, as well as one-on-one mentoring through Eagle Exchange, or you can reach out to them through LinkedIn. We'll have the names of all of our panelists today put online. I don't think I'll put your email addresses directly online for your privacy reasons, but we'll let students reach out to you through other channels along the way. So thanks to the alumni who are here. These sessions are meant to give students a vision of various career paths that our alumni have taken, and to introduce them to individuals who have taken those paths for further conversation. So we're going to start today with each of our alumni panelists speaking for about 5 minutes about the career path they've taken since graduation from the International Studies program, and what their job entails today, and perhaps a few lessons that they've learned along the way. Then we'll open up for a conversation afterwards and some reflection points at that point. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Mickey. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate the opportunity. Throughout the years, I have interacted with a lot of international studies students, and I always really look forward to it and enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So I'd really encourage everyone to please reach out to me if there's anything particularly of interest as I walk through sort of my career path. So I currently work for Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a management and technology consulting firm. We primarily support U.S. government clients across the defense, intelligence, and civilian sectors, but we also do have limited commercial work as well as work supporting and consulting for foreign governments. And the thing that I really like about working for Booz Allen, and I have been a contractor for the entirety of my career, is that you get the opportunity not only to support the U.S. national security mission in your work with clients, but you get to approach that role from more of a traditional management consulting perspective, doing things like change management, organizational philosophy, et cetera. So I currently support the U.S. European Command, or EUCOM, specifically working in the Joint Cyber Center. And EUCOM is located in Stuttgart, Germany, which is where I've lived for the past 3 years. And it's the military command that oversees all U.S. operations within Europe. My specific role is monitoring cyber threats across Europe, primarily Russian, as you can imagine, and then conducting and managing our information sharing efforts with NATO and our various European allies. So as part of that role, I get to interface and engage a lot with NATO, as well as various bilateral allies, conducting engagements, things like that. It's a part of my work that I enjoy quite a bit. As far as my path post-BC, I was an international studies major, concentrating in political science, and I graduated in 2010. I went straight to grad school, completed my master's in international security at the Corbell School at the University of Denver. And while I was at the Corbell School, I interned at the Atlantic Council, as well as one of the research centers affiliated with the National Defense University at Fort McNair in DC. Following grad school, I've supported a range of Defense Department clients, including the Office of Secretary of Defense, the Navy, and the Air Force, and I also had the opportunity to go on a short deployment to Afghanistan. And really, I think part of the reason that I enjoy working in the private sector while still supporting federal clients is you get the opportunity to support a range of clients. There's a lot of opportunities for mobility to work on different projects that may not necessarily be long-term, or sometimes they may be. And in all of those roles, really the common thread is that I've always done security cooperation, which is essentially the Defense Department's terminology for collaborative activities with our partner nations to build their capability and capacity in support of U.S. objectives. I hope that that's a good brief snapshot of sort of my career, where I'm at now, and how I got here. A couple pieces of specific advice that I always like to share with students is number one, develop both a regional and a functional interest if possible. So I think that a lot of times students, myself included, really focus on the regional portion of that, but having a functional specialty to pair that with, whether it's cyberspace or humanitarian operations or threat finance, there's a whole range of these functional interests, I think makes you a more competitive and compelling candidate for whatever job you're going for. Number two, I would definitely say to try and publish as much as possible in any BC journals, other journals, even online blogs. I think having a hyperlink on your resume where a prospective employer can click on, they can read your writing, shows that you can write and that you want to be read. And I think it's a real differentiator when it comes to applications. Number three, if you're interested in working in national security or foreign policy, strongly recommends prioritizing getting a security clearance however you can. My wife works in the intelligence community, and she got her clearance essentially being an event planner for foreign dignitaries coming to the Pentagon, serving coffee just so she could get that clearance and use that to land a better job. And fourth, I would also say think broadly about career opportunities. So I talked a lot about the private sector and consulting firms that you can work with where you're still supporting the government mission. I'd also say that there's a lot more agencies out there than most people realize. The intelligence community alone has 17 agencies. So as you're doing your job search, be broad. And the same, I think, applies to think tanks. Everyone is familiar with Brookings Institute and CSIS, but there are dozens of think tanks out there. Some of them may have a niche or a specialty that really fits with what you are interested in. So be broad as you're looking at potential opportunities out there. That's all I've got. So hopefully I didn't take up too much time. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Mickey. Let's see. Ella, do you mind going next? Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Always happy to help, so feel free to reach out. My path is fairly short. I graduated in 2018, and I've been working for the Department of State since August 2019. So I just started here. I'm a foreign service officer at DOS, and I'm in the political cone. So right now I'm based in DC at Maine State on the political review staff for East Africa. So while I'm in DC, we're really looking at all of the reporting coming out of different embassies and countries in East Africa, how those create regional trends, how what's happening in Somalia affects what we're doing in Kenya, that sort of thing, and then looking at how that affects US interests and security. In 2 years, when I go abroad to an embassy, political officers are doing more of meeting with local officials, leaders, the press, really looking to build the US image in that host country, as well as shaping US messages there and the information that's coming back to policymakers in DC. So the big focus for political officers is depth of historic and political knowledge for that region. So while I was at BC, I was an international studies major with a concentration in poli-sci and a double major in psychology with a minor in French and a concentration in Arabic. So I focused in the Middle East, ended up getting put in East Africa for now, but I do think that having that regional focus and especially the languages really helped me. I applied when I started the application process for state the spring semester of my senior year in February with the test. So it is a long process. I finally got hired mid-2019. So in between I was working local jobs, I was working marketing, and then I was an athlete at BC. So I coached for a year while I waited for that application process and security clearance to go through, because it is a very long process to apply for government jobs. I think the biggest things coming from BC going to state were really the fact that even the IS majors specifically are it's very interdisciplinary. So things like economics that some poli-sci majors don't have, that is a detriment when you get here, we had coming in to the job. I think the big thing, especially for applying for government jobs, is to find something you're passionate about. Being in the public sector, I'm never going to make as much money as several of my peers who graduated when I did, but I'm really interested in the work, and it's something that I really see as beneficial for both my personal development and for something I can give back to the country. So I think if you're thinking of going government, The pay can sometimes be a little bit scary, but there's usually great job security, and you do really get to find projects that you're interested in. If you've taken a language at BC, use it after graduation. I made the very big mistake of taking 4 years of 2 languages, graduating, and then barely using either one of them. So when I came into state and started using testing for my foreign languages, neither of them were where they used to be. Any government, national security, anything job, whatever language you have is hugely beneficial. So definitely keep working on that. And apply for things you don't think that you're ready for. Most foreign service officers are mid-career hires. There's definitely a decent portion of people like me who came straight out of college, but it is the minority. So I applied assuming this was an absolute long shot. I surprised myself by passing the test. And I have a lot of friends, both in state and other areas of the government, who just applied because they were interested. And as long as you shape your resume well and have something that fits, there's a good chance that even if you don't think you're qualified, that they see something interesting. So yeah, again, I've only been working here for 6 months. I'll answer any questions I can, but happy to help.
Okay, thanks so much, Ella. I really appreciate that. Why don't we turn next to Zach?
All right. Let me set that. Okay, my name is Zach Smith. I am a pilot in the U.S. Navy, and I'm currently completing an Olmsted Scholarship in Thessaloniki, Greece, at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. I was an international studies major with a focus in ethics and international social justice. Graduated in 2009. From there, commissioned into the Navy, went to Pensacola, Florida for 2 years of flight school. Was with helicopter squadrons in San Diego for 6 years, with a deployment in the Persian Gulf with the Carl Vinson Strike Group. After that, in 2017, I was selected for the Olmsted program. It's a private scholarship that selects young military officers to receive a year of language training, followed by 2 years of graduate education at a foreign university. The point is to make more broadly educated and adaptive leaders, future leaders. I spent 9 months at the Defense Language Institute in DC learning Greek, and I was fortunate enough to get selected to go to Greece. So I've been here for the past 2 years. I'm just finishing up my master's now, actually defending my thesis on Wednesday. And then this summer, I'll move back to San Diego to continue assignments at a helicopter squadron there. I have found that so this is kind of an intimidating crowd. Everyone here has been working very hard and doing great work at some of the top places in the country. And I think I hopped into this career path very early. So for prospective BC students, probably the question is, do you choose a military career or not? The point of job security has been brought up. My original intent with going into the military was just to get short-term leadership experience and use that to transition out and find other experiences in the civilian world. Then I found this Olmsted program, and that kind of changed the calculation for me. So within the military, I found some very interesting opportunities. I absolutely love I haven't worn a uniform in 3 years. I love the fact that I'm just kind of hanging out and traveling. Well, was traveling before everything got shut down. So this has been a very cool experience. I think the biggest things I took from my education at BC was how to learn was one of the biggest ones. My experience, I went to flight school for 2 years. It was a fairly technical education. Certainly my education at BC didn't really prepare me for the technical aspect of it. But what I found is that every place I've gone to, they kind of teach you what they need you to know. It's on you to be able to learn it. And I think BC had a great job. It was already mentioned, from learning economics, from learning other social sciences, how everything is very balanced. And I think that creates someone who is able to learn, and that's a huge advantage. Also, I think it has taught me how to, especially with ethics and social justice, has taught me how to consider others. And I think that has helped become a better leader. And in the military, I think that's pretty valuable, but that's going to be valuable in any career path you go into. So advice I have would be to challenge yourself, to kind of, and seek to balance yourself out. maybe identify areas where you have strengths or where you have some biases or weaknesses, and then seek out opportunities that challenge those biases and weaknesses to make yourself a more rounded, balanced person. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Zach. I really appreciate it. As you can see, those who are listening, we've got already such a great diverse group of folks here. I'm sure the conversation will be great. Let's continue on with Jennifer. Do you mind going next?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure being here. My name is Jennifer Shin, and I graduated May 2013 from BC with an international studies major and Asian studies economics minors. So just like Ella, I'm also a foreign service officer at the State Department. So I can't really dive into what I currently do in my work because I'm actually in full-time long-term language training at the Foreign Service Institute in Arlington before actually shipping out to my first assignment in Guangzhou, China. I was supposed to leave in June this year, so like a month and a half from now, but got indefinitely delayed because of the current coronavirus situation. So from BC onward, so I'll just explain how I got to this path. So while at BC, as an international studies major, I applied to the foreign scholarship to study abroad in Japan for a year, following my professor's advice. That was how I was first introduced to the government service because upon receiving the scholarship and graduating from college, you're supposed to find a job broadly related to national security within the federal government within the 3 years of your graduation. So all my internships throughout undergrad during the summer were focused on diplomacy, foreign affairs, U.S. career relations. That from after college, I became more interested in building up some experience in the private sector. So I joined one of the Samsung corporate groups in South Korea called Samsung SCS, IT system servicing company as a business specialist. And I was mainly focused on communicating with international vendors and partners and clients to explain what our products are and services. And after working there for 3 years, I decided to leave to pursue a master's degree in international studies. And with that, while trying to study for GRE and applying for grad schools, I worked for a year at a think tank called Sejong Institute, focusing on Korean Peninsular issues, North Korean nuclear issues, overall U.S. career relations as a research assistant for a year. And along with applying for my grad school applications, I also applied to this fellowship called the Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship, which is actually a very highly competitive selective scholarships that helps its recipients with funding for grad school, both 2 years of grad school studies and 2 internships through the Department of State, one in the domestic office in Foggy Bottom, which is our main headquarters, and another one in one of our embassies or consulates abroad. So while in grad school, I focused mainly on Korea studies, again, East Asian affairs broadly speaking, and completed 2 internships through the fellowship program. So one was with the Japan desk and the Department of State, Bureau of East Asian Pacific Affairs. That was summer 2018. And the recent one I completed was an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Minsk, Belarus, assisting with consular affairs and political, economic, public diplomacy sections. And upon completing that internship, I returned to the U.S. and started my incoming Foreign Service Officer orientation class called A100 in September 2019. So ever since then, I been in training full-time and not actually working, but we've been through a lot of inspiring and empowering talks and lectures and workshops with current leading foreign service officers in their senior level positions. And what I really find value in this job is that we put so much pride into promoting American interest values abroad, protecting American citizens and advancing American business agendas, or helping or strengthening ties with our host country governments. So my projected responsibilities once I ship out to Guangzhou, China, is to be a consular officer, processing visas, interviewing visa applicants, and adjudicating their visas, which is a requirement for all incoming Foreign Service officers. So while there are 5 career tracks within the Foreign Service called their political, economics, public diplomacy, management, and consular officers. And I'm originally a political cone officer. As a newly hired entry-level officer, I'm required to complete at least a year or 2 of consular job. So pretty much, again, visa or non-immigrant, immigrant visa processing, interviewing Chinese citizens coming to the U.S. for immigration or studies or business trips, or helping American citizens out there who are in jailed or who are in prison or in hospitals or are in trouble, as well as investigating fraud applications. That's gonna be my 2 years to be spent in China, and after that, I'll be heading out to another post as hopefully a political officer. I don't know when that'll be, but this is pretty much how my career has been upon finishing BC. And what I would like to advise to current students is that definitely challenge yourself and don't limit yourself to whatever you think you can do. Take any opportunities that you see. So for example, this Pickering Fellowship is, I believe, to be about only 5-6% acceptance rate, and I really thought I had a 0 chance at getting this because of its rigorous and intensive process. And there are so many highly competitive and qualified applicants out there. But I'll just give it a shot, and it doesn't really hurt to try. And I think through that experience, I can probably better shape what my future career path will be. And it was a very huge, pleasant surprise when I actually got to the final list to do the interview and even get the fellowship in the end. That's already 2 years ago from today. So, and a lot of BC professors have been very supportive and encouraging throughout this process. So I would also advise you to make sure to build and maintain strong relationships with BC professors because they're huge resources to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. We need to move on pretty quickly.
Sorry about this extended. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later.
Okay, thanks. Can you just tell us when the Pickering applications are due?
Yeah, so it was due in January for me, but now it's changed to September.
Of 2020, it's now due in September.
It's going to be September.
And it traditionally is in January, you said?
Yeah. So what this fellowship does is, other than providing you with financial assistance and internship and networking opportunities, it gives you service requirements. So you have to work with the Department of State for 5 years as a contractual obligation.
Okay, great, thanks. We can circle back to that if other students want to hear more. Thanks so much, Jennifer, I really appreciate it. Emma, could you go next for us?
Yes, hi everyone. It's exciting to be on the other side of one of these panels. I graduated in 2016 from BC. I was an IS major and then a management and leadership minor in CSOM. Just first, I echo Ella about language and economics being a really important and great part of the IS major and something that has definitely come in handy in grad school, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm a first-year student at Johns Hopkins SAIS here in DC. I am a strategic studies concentrator, which is essentially like security and defense policy. And then I'm also minoring in European and Eurasian studies, and then everyone at SAIS has an international economics specialization as well, which is hopefully one of the reasons I picked it, hopefully will be useful for a later career. And then I'm also, it's on hold right now, but I was interning this semester at the Pentagon. I was at the Europe and NATO office in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. So I'm hoping to be able to get back to that this summer. And if not this summer, then we'll be continuing on to that in the fall. So after I kind of had a little bit of a windy path from BC, but just to put it briefly, senior year, I had a job in the intelligence community for right after I graduated that unfortunately fell through. So I stayed in Boston for a year to figure things out. I worked as a paralegal and basically just talked to a ton of BC alumni who were living in DC and got advice to kind of just moved to DC if I wanted to be here and to figure out just kind of a different path and to stay flexible. So that's what I did. So I moved to DC in 2017 without a job, but I had a couple leads that I was hoping would work out, and luckily one of them did. So I worked as a consultant for 2 years, and I was kind of wary of taking the job because it was financial consulting, and that's not really what I was super interested in. But it was going to give me a security clearance, which I thought would be very useful. And I also was going to be able to, it was a government consulting agency. So I worked for a year with DOD and then a year with the State Department in the Bureau of Consular Affairs. So even though it wasn't as thrilling of work as I would have hoped, it was still a really great experience. And I think definitely helped me gain the quantitative skills and kind of background in government that was then helpful to my application for grad school, which I decided kind of after 2 years of consulting that I was ready to go back and try to switch into government and the public sector. So that's why I've been at SAIS, have loved it so far, and hopefully we'll be back in person in the fall. But just quickly, any advice that I would have, again, definitely stay flexible and be open to different career paths. And ways to get into government. Also what Mickey said, there's so many more ways that you can and should look beyond just USA jobs. And like what I had with consulting or private sector, I mean, I was essentially working at the State Department for a year, which is really cool. And I worked with a lot of actually consular FSOs, which was cool. But you just have to trust that what you're doing will eventually lead to somewhere that you want to be. And then also, I guess more concretely, if you're unsure of where you want to be, or even if you have more of an idea, use your BC network and any other networks that you have to kind of figure out what advice they have and what they've done, like kind of what this is a great opportunity to hear from people that were in your place just, a few years ago. And definitely make sure that you have some professors who you have good relationships with that you can, if you're thinking about going to grad school, you're going to need letters of recommendation for that. So definitely as you're going throughout your time at BC, make sure, you have some professors that you've really enjoyed and can build a relationship with to then go back to in a couple of years when you decide that if you want to go to grad school, that they can be really helpful for.
Thanks. And we professors wait with open arms and ears to hear back from students along the way. We love keeping in touch with alumni. So please don't feel it's an imposition when you do reach out to us. It's a point of great pride for us to see what you do after you graduate. So please don't hesitate to do that. Thanks very much, Emma. Kristen, would you mind going next for us?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristen Shapiro. I'm currently a senior executive at the FBI in the Counterterrorism Division. I started my career as the first major that was a full international studies major to graduate from BC in 2004. So feeling a little bit old on the panel, but hopefully that just means I have some more advice to go through. I started my career in the intelligence community with an internship with the Office of Naval Intelligence the summer of my junior year, which came through on a whim through an alumni from BC who was currently working at ONI. So I echo the panelists' view in terms of take opportunities where you can get them and take them from BC peers who are out there. My internship summer, they flew me to Singapore and Hong Kong, so it was a pretty cool opportunity. And at the end of the summer, I got a full-time position. So I worked in ONI for about 3 years doing diplomacy for the Navy, so similar to what some of our other peers have talked about, doing information sharing with foreign partners. I had the Middle East as part of my portfolio, so got to do a lot of amazing travel, and worked my way throughout naval intelligence up into the Pentagon, working for the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence as her assistant. It was a great opportunity, and at that point, about 5 years in, I really knew I had to go back to grad school. So I sourced opportunities from various mentors, and really what I was told is if I wanted to stay within the intelligence community, I might want to look at doing something that was more mission-oriented in terms of mission support. So it really was understand the people and the money, and you'll have an opportunity to go far. So looking at that, I actually went to MBA programs, which as an IS major, you never could have told me I would have gone for an MBA at that point in time, but my career really led me to that opportunity. So I went to the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, had a great opportunity, and really approached it as I didn't know what I didn't know. Since I had a federal career, there might be news out there. So I really honed in a lot the the consulting opportunities, which would allow me to still remain mission focused, which is what I really appreciated about my time with naval intelligence, as long as get the variety that some of our other panel members have discussed. At the end of the day, at the end of my second year, I was afforded the opportunity to either do internal consulting with the FBI through a program they call the Special Advisor Program, or external consulting with another big company. And I really thought long and hard about those two career paths and chose to join the FBI because I felt like I could make a lot of impact internal to the organization. So I joined the FBI and was put in the counterterrorism division, which was my top choice. Had amazing opportunities internally to really help us look at how we were allocating our resources across the FBI, how we were managing our threat across 56 field offices and 70 plus different legal attaché offices around the world. And I know we're short on time, so I won't go into too much detail, but I spent some years in counterterrorism. I moved around to manage the FBI's enterprise strategy as a leader in the organization, worked in our branch that dealt with cyber division and some of the cooler FBI things you might see on TV like SWAT and HRT. And then eventually made my way to what was my long-term dream job that I'm currently in, running the resource management section of the counterterrorism division. So I call it running the business of counterterrorism. So all of those human resources, budget, security, training, strategy, various components all fall under my purview. And it's been a wonderful opportunity, not the least of which is that I got to do hiring for the counterterrorism division and really do support for the FBI mission externally. So I would let folks know that we are still currently hiring in the FBI. It's been deemed a mission critical function throughout the COVID pandemic. So if you go to fbijobs.gov/students, you'll find opportunities both for current onboard students as well as those who are graduating. In particular, we are hiring intelligence analysts. So it's something, the posting may close quickly. So I wanted to make sure we got the word out there for you to look at those job opportunities. And if you're interested in intelligence community jobs writ large, you can also go to intelligence.gov, where you'll see the 17 agencies that were earlier mentioned. There are various hiring opportunities that we have because we're all very cognizant of wanting to make sure we're still hiring the best talent that's out there. And I would just conclude by echoing some of the comments out there of take the opportunities that you see. They might not necessarily be what you think they are, but getting a foot in the door is always important. So whether that's internally to an organization where you're able to get your security clearance, if it's looking at those external opportunities, if it's looking through an academic program, there are a lot of ways to do the mission-oriented work that those who are interested in national security are interested in, and one door never closes any other path. So just get that foot in the door, and the BC Alumni Network is here to help you however we can. That's all.
Thanks so much, Kristen. I really appreciate it. And congrats for being that first class of full IS majors. That's terrific. I'd love to catch up about the history of that at some point. It's also really helpful to hear the websites and to hear about the hiring and such. I'll be revamping our career pages on our website, and I'll make sure that that gets included. I'll also note, for those of you working in intelligence, that we'll be doing a non-recorded intelligence panel in the fall that's more focused on intelligence communities. And so I'll reach out to you all, and we'll try to do a series of conversations on that as well, and you can help me structure that. So, okay, thanks. We are still eager to hear from Abby. Thanks so much for being here, Abby. The floor is yours.
Sure, thanks. And thanks so much to everyone else for being here as well. I know it's kind of crazy with finals and things going on, and as well as just kind of living through a pandemic. So thanks, and shout out for everyone to being here. So I am just down the street right now. I'm in Cambridge. I am a graduate student, a first-year Master in Public Policy candidate at the Kennedy School at Harvard. So decided after about 4 years of working, I graduated from BC in 2015, to come back and start graduate school this past fall. So as I mentioned, I'm in a Master's in Public Policy program. I am focusing in international and global affairs, and particularly focused on women's empowerment and political and civic engagement. So how I got here to graduate school, during my time at BC, I interned for the State Department twice during undergrad, once the summer between my junior and senior years at the US Embassy in Ecuador, and then also a virtual internship during my senior year with the State Department as well. So definitely keep an eye out. I don't know anything about the timeline of those applications, but I do know that they are still doing the virtual program. So particularly now, it's a really great opportunity and way to engage if you can't necessarily get yourself to DC. So I did that that during senior year, and then also the summer following senior year, started as an intern in an office in DC at the State Department, working in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs on an exchange program. And then at the end of the summer, one of the people in the office was leaving, so I got hired on as a contractor there, was a contractor at the State Department for about 4 years before coming back to grad school, as I mentioned. So I was there embedded on a team at State, so kind of different from some other contracting paths that are out there. Worked on youth policy in sub-Saharan Africa for 4 years, worked on a leadership development program for young professionals from all across sub-Saharan Africa. So happy to answer any questions about graduate school, how to navigate that process, as well as what working at the State Department looks like, even though I wasn't a direct hire like some of the other folks on the call. And then in terms of advice, would definitely 100% echo what Mickey mentioned before about trying to figure out what your kind of functional area of expertise and what your regional area of expertise would be, or even if it's not expertise at this point, interest. I think it's really helpful. It can be kind of overwhelming when you're first leaving BC and trying to find a job and trying to figure out just what the opportunities are that are out there and where you might plug in. So that became a helpful way for me to kind of narrow what it was I was looking at, while also kind of keeping things broad enough that I was flexible. I think particularly now, as someone who's been internship searching for the summer, flexibility is really, really important as you're heading out into finding a job and into the workforce. So if you can't get a job that is exactly perfectly what you want, I think keeping in mind that as long as it's got a piece of what you're interested in. I studied Spanish and was a Hispanic studies minor while I was at BC, and now I'm focused on sub-Saharan Africa and worked on Africa during my time at State. So definitely don't, as Kristen mentioned, don't feel like you're kind of closing yourself off to other opportunities by opening yourself up to something different.
Okay, thanks so much, Abby. We really appreciate it. What a great panel here we have. It's all kinds of amazing experience from the past 20 years, and this is really terrific. I'd like to open up immediately for any questions that the audience has on the panel, and you're welcome to turn on your video and ask the question directly. And while we're waiting for that, I can also ask one question that a few of you can feel free to jump in on. You've mentioned economics already as something that was important that you studied at Boston College, but are there other classes or experiences that you had at BC that helped you get where you are now, that made you, that you could tell students about before it's too late for them, before they graduate?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So I think one of my favorite classes and one of the most useful after graduation was actually my senior IS seminar. So I took my seminar with Professor Senkowitz. So the first half of the semester focused on the representation of the Middle East in US media, and the second half of the semester focuses on US influence in media in the Middle East, so how we message to countries in the Middle East. And I think, first of all, it was very interesting for that specific knowledge, but the bigger thing was the format of the class. So it was a lot of addressing stereotypes and how we learn not only culturally, but things like how textbooks are written. That's the whole history is written by the victor thing. And Senkowitz really looked at different historical events from the perspectives of different countries and what would happen. He brought in each week a different speaker, often with very conflicting views. So we met with a Palestinian journalist in Gaza, and then the next week we met with a state media expert from Israel. So I think any of those classes that really challenge your viewpoint, not just your personal opinions, but the lens and your worldview in which you see things, really, really help to then grow your educational experience outside of BC.
Any others want to chip in? Emma, good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I worked the summer before senior year. I was an undergraduate research assistant for Professor Julian Berg in the history department. He was working on a book about the history of terrorism, so I took his class on that the previous fall, and then worked on that that summer, and then a little bit throughout senior year. And I would highly recommend getting involved in the research if you can with any professor. One, it can build a relationship like I was kind of talking about before, and also just gaining that research experience that can be helpful. I mean, I was just referencing that position when I applied to be a research assistant at SICE for a professor. So I was like, well, I've already done this. And that was something to really helpful to draw back on. So I think for the research experience and also getting to know a professor more and just having something else beyond, you know, just an internship on your resume can be really helpful.
I would also like to
please.
Okay, I would also like to jump in and say the BC Study Abroad program has benefited me in many great ways. I studied abroad in Japan for a year under the Bourne Scholarship, and as I said before, that was how I got first introduced to working for the federal government. Definitely, it was full of many eye-opening, striking, and enriching experiences, and learning about Japan and Japan-U.S. relations or Japan-Korean historical controversies from Japan's perspective, and really immersing into the society and really honing and refining my language skills. That really helped me a lot, even onto grad school and now. So I took a year off to study abroad and coming back to BC as a senior year student, applying for jobs while going through school studies was definitely a huge challenge for me because of how the academic levels in the US and Japan were, how different they were. But I would definitely recommend this, and also try to seek out and apply for various fellowships and scholarships available that will help you with grad studies and like shape your professional career along the way with networking opportunities.
Anyone else have a strong recommendation about experiences or classes or anything at BC you'd like to share before we move on to other questions?
Yeah, just one quick note. I was actually participated in the inaugural. I don't even remember the name of the course at this point, but Dr. Bailey's short study abroad trip to Kuwait, which I hope she still runs, and that was a great way to not only get some firsthand real world observations of a region that I know is of high interest to a lot of the folks on the call, but it was also, because it was only 3 weeks to a month, a way to get in an extra study abroad experience without dedicating a full semester to it. So whether you're able to do just that course and spend the rest of your time in Chestnut Hill, or do that in conjunction with additional study abroad.
Yep, that's always a very popular course that she did it for 10 years in a row, and I think she took a break last year because of when Ramadan fell, and I'm not sure if it would have been canceled this summer anyway. I think she may have shifted to Jordan for a year, but she'll be doing it more in the future. I know she loves that class for sure. And of course, there are other summer programs abroad. Professor Nakazato has taught abroad many times. I've taught in South Africa as well, and I will be in Croatia next year. A lot of our faculty teach summer courses abroad that are great opportunities for students to add on a different place. Are there questions that have come up from the audience before we move on to others? Yeah, Connor, thank you for raising your hand.
Thanks. So I was just wondering, how do you go, if you're looking for like intelligence jobs and stuff, how do you go about it in a discreet manner? And like, because I know you're supposed to be kind of secretive about it, but also how do you like get your name out there?
This is Chris, and I can take some from a hiring manager perspective. So I certainly think if you go to that intelligence.gov, you can see what kind of jobs are out there. Yes, the ask is that you're discreet, but at the same time, you'll also have to give references for various places you've lived in order to get a security clearance. So there are some folks you'll, of course, have to tell that you're looking at different jobs. I think, though, that Eagle Connect and some of the other DC tools that they have now to connect you with alumni are a really good way to get your name out there as well. So a lot of these sites will allow you to mention someone who's told you about the position or told you about the job. And the more people who are currently working in those agencies, if you're interested in working in them, the better that they can connect you to hiring managers who might be able to help elevate your resume to the top when there might be kind of a pool of folks who are in there. So the more networking you can do on top of that would be great. Certainly, if you have any questions about the FBI, Navy intelligence, or other ones, I'm more than happy to connect with you offline and share some of the folks who are in my network who might not necessarily work for FBI or ONI, but can be in a position to help give you more information.
Awesome, thank you.
I would like to chime in and add my 2 cents. So actually in second semester of my senior year in college, I was actually applying to some of the intel community agencies, namely CIA and NS, I think I can be open about it because it's already 7 years ago. I went directly to their website and applied to become a language analyst / open source officer position, and applied through their regular process, filling in applications in my bio. And I just forgot about them because I knew how strenuous and long this process would take. And a couple months later, they would call me with an unknown, undisclosed number to schedule an interview. And then later, one of the interviewers call me for an actual in-person phone interview. And it's just the way that is. Just do what the website instructions tell you to do, and it's a very long process. And later, when they contact me back for a follow-up with all biographical data and essay questions, I was already outside the country, starting my new job in South Korea, so I couldn't follow up with them. But also, in addition to that, because these foreign service and intel community jobs require you a very daunting security clearance process, I would advise you to keep a log of your foreign contacts that you keep in touch with frequently and closely, as well as all your residencies, both in the US and abroad. So once you are actually in the registrar to be pulled off, you can submit these really easily, and you don't have to like sit down for 10-15 hours a day to think back on your past 10 years of history. Yeah.
Thanks, that's helpful. That was actually part of my next question was, other people can jump in as well. If you had advice about the security clearance process. Anyone else want to jump in? Jennifer, those are really helpful ideas of keeping your logs of contacts. Other ideas?
The only really lame thing I have to say has to do with marijuana use. So depending on which agency you're looking at, they might have a 1 year to 3 year ban on the last time that you used marijuana. It's super confusing now, I know, since in many states it's actually legal, but that's something to just keep in mind for yourself if you are looking at pursuing those types of opportunities.
Thanks, that's helpful.
I would just add, just based on my background, I had mentioned that the reason that one of the reasons that I had taken the job that I got, the consulting job in DC, was because they sponsored a security clearance, and that can be somewhat rare, but I would definitely look into if you're interested in getting that for later use. It certainly helped me get my internship at the Pentagon because I already had an active security clearance. I would recommend looking into private sector companies, and I remember when I was applying, the job description said that they would sponsor one if you didn't already have a secret level clearance. So definitely look into that if you're trying to get one and you're not directly going into the intelligence community. You can oftentimes find consulting companies or other private sector companies that will help with that.
Oh, yes. Also, as for my security clearance, so it was a very long, rigorous process for me, given how much time I spent living in Korea and like my family members and friends being in South Korea. So definitely keep a list of like foreign contacts, close friends you keep in touch with, and later you can just submit them later. And but thankfully, I think being in the fellowship program accelerated my process. It actually took shorter than I thought, like 7 months, just in time to start my internship in the summer between my first and second years of grad school. So definitely look into the fellowship program. It's a very huge opportunity and rewarding. It's a very grateful and resourceful program if you want to land a career job, or if you want to enter the foreign service. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, this is a very BC question, if you will, but I'm wondering if some or all of you might want to reflect for a minute on the way that your values in your work have found a relationship over the course of your time after graduation. We talk a lot about at Boston College about being of service to others, but also finding the things that the world needs from you that you can offer to the world, and how you can find a purpose that is more than just moving through the day, making enough money to sustain yourself or others. And some of you have already mentioned mission-oriented work and values along in your introductions, but I wonder if some of you might want to reflect on whether your values have been challenged by your work, whether they've been sustained and built up over the years in your work, or what those values look like now that you've been out of BC for a while.
I'm happy to get started. So my values of men and women for others and trying to be of service certainly were very impacted by the events of September 11th, which occurred when I was in college. And so that really drove my career potential and was a great intersection with BC's values. And I've really kept that in mind throughout my career, whether it was with naval intelligence or now with the FBI counterterrorism mission. Part of coming back to the FBI to work in counterterrorism really helped put me on the front lines of being closer to protecting America from terrorist attack, which is really what I had been looking to do. And I've been incredibly pleased by how able I have been to impact that from both when I started as a GS7 all the way to now being a senior executive. I think that there's no dearth of opportunity to really impact the mission, help move it forward. When I was in grad school, we had someone who was a lean cuisine brand manager, and he got up and said, you know, I live and die this brand, it's my life, this is what I do. And I thought, man, that is so not for me. And so I think that's really helped redefine for me my values that, you know, I want to live and die something where I am helping the American people. And I've been able to do it in government, but I think all of our panelists who have opportunities outside of government have found a way to do that as well. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity that no amount of money in the world could really take that personal satisfaction away.
Thanks so much. Others?
I don't think I can put it any better than Kristen did, to be quite honest, but I definitely find that I find a lot of professional satisfaction in the mission-oriented nature of the work, that it's something I do believe in, and I certainly think that that nests very well with the broader Jesuit education that you received at BC. You know, two of the more practical things that no one mentioned is that if you choose a career in foreign policy or national security, you'll probably spend much of your career in offices that aren't allowed to have windows. You can't have your cell phones. These things that, you know, frankly, in 2020 are somewhat incredible for people not in this field. But the reason you do it every day is because you show up and you are working for a larger purpose alongside men and women who have dedicated themselves to the same. So.
Anyone else want to speak on that? It's okay to move on to the topics. Okay. Is there anything that you all would like that you didn't get a chance to say along the way, or that you'd like to add? We just have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure we leave on time so people can get to our next meetings. We're all feeling good. Okay, it can be hard with a large group to move back and forth among topics. So why don't we wrap up then? And one thing that I can promise is that I'll be in touch with everybody again in the coming months as this video goes online, but also to make sure that I have correct info so that students can reach out to you as well. I really appreciate the time you've taken to be here to reflect on your own careers and to offer guidance for our students who are thinking about those careers. It's a delight to see you all again. And as I mentioned earlier, not just myself, but all faculty love hearing from alumni. So don't be afraid to reach back out to someone, whether you need a letter or just a reference, or whether you just want to say hi. Those are all great. So thank you all for being here from across the world. Take care of yourselves, and thanks so much. We'll see you again very soon.